My name is Jim Rinaldi. I am a co-chair of the Fellows Program at Avasant and also very proud of that and to work with my colleague Ray Bernard. And I'm very excited about this panel because we're going to talk about things from a different perspective. Technology plays a role, but it's really business outcome. The ability to get to business outcome that these panelists will be able to talk about. So I'd like to turn it over to, I have Robert Taylor, the CIO of Fluor Corporation. I have Josh Zalen, who is the head of IT for Independent Health, and Beth Howen, who is in charge, global head of digital transformation for Atos, which is also one of our sponsors of the event. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And if I may, first of all, I'd like to just say, if Wally is still here, he did a terrific job, and I think we ought to give him one more round of applause, if you don't mind. I don't think I can moderate as well as he can, but we're going to give it a shot. So I'd like to start with Beth, if you don't mind, if you can tell us a little bit about your role and tell us a little bit about Atos in case people
Sure,
don't know.
absolutely. So first of all, it's really happy to be here with all of you. It's great to meet many new faces. It's super great to be face-to-face. We haven't been that way for a while, so really happy to be here. Atos is really happy to sponsor this event, so a big thank you to Avasant for giving us that opportunity. You know, Atos is your strategic digital leader. We're here to help customers across their journey, their digital transformation journey. As you said, this isn't about the technology. This is about the process. This is about helping our customers figure out how to reinvent themselves. I think one of the things that we have learned in recent times is that we all have business problems that we need to solve, right? But I think the pandemic really accelerated the digital journey for many businesses. And I think we've learned that we really have to reinvent ourselves to make sure we remain relevant in the marketplace. As consumers, as humans, we demand a customer experience level to none. We expect the Amazon experience in everything that we do. I think businesses and people were somewhat patient with enterprises for a while. And I think that patience has run out, and the pandemic has shown that we were not really prepared for that level of disruption. You know, we all had our business continuity plans, our disaster recovery plans, and they did not prepare us for the events of the pandemic. And so we're really here to help our customers figure out how to reinvent themselves, how to figure out what their journey is, to create real business value for their constituents, for their customers, and for their stakeholders. I run globally the digital transformation side of our business, and we're finding that our customers in their digital journey are buying services in 3 areas. They're buying it in data, they're buying it in apps, and they're buying it in cloud. So if you think of that 3-legged stool, I run the data side of the house. So I'm running, you know, the IoT, the hyper-automation, the RPA, the analytics. We actually have a really significant net zero sustainability piece of our business as well. And so, and a really big consulting piece. So I run the consulting practice for the company globally. So we're really here to help along that end-to-end customer journey.
Thank you, Beth.
Sure.
Josh, you want to explain your role and your initial thoughts about what Independent Health is doing with changing the workforce and the workplace and Office of the Future?
Yeah, I'll start just with a little bit about Independent Health. It's a really special company, and I imagine most of you have not heard of us. We are a small regional health plan located in Buffalo, New York, in Western New York. We are a not-for-profit. And we have a mission statement to improve the health and wellness of our local community. And a lot of companies have lofty mission statements, but really their mission is to improve shareholder value or make someone rich enough so they can buy their child a Lamborghini or something. But we don't have shareholders, we don't have a wealthy owner. The only thing we have is improving the health and wellness of our local community. And we truly live by that. And my role is to ensure that from an IT perspective, we're able to support all of our clinicians, all of our agents, all those folks that are supporting the community. We have a half million members in the local area. We have a very wide provider network also in the local area. And if we were unable to support them, there would be true pain in the local community. So if they couldn't access their systems, if the hardware wasn't working, it would be a serious problem for Western New York, which is already a struggling economy, unfortunately. When the pandemic hit, we were actually in a good place, which is maybe a little bit surprising to hear. We have two primary IT partners who we had worked with maybe through sheer good luck, perhaps, in ensuring that we had a business continuity plan, not pandemic specific, but generally, that we had business continuity plans, disaster recovery plans, and they had been tested. And we actually had just run a test about a half year before the pandemic to see what would happen if the office was inaccessible. Now, it was just for a day, and that meant we had to get everybody working from home. We have 1,500 employees, and there were quite a few bumps and bruises. But thank goodness, because we were able to work through that and position ourselves well for basically a very positive digital experience for the workforce during the pandemic. And since then, and we'll talk about this in this panel, we're now able to say, okay, we got the table stakes done. What can we do to elevate that experience?
Excellent. And Robert, you're CIO of Fluor Corporation. It's a global enterprise. So I want to talk about your experience and what does Fluor do and what do you see that your challenges are in this topic?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Fluor Corporation, we're based headquartered in Dallas, but we have offices all across the globe. Engineering construction, so we're building refineries, power stations, roads, bridges, semiconductor manufacturing facilities, etc. So most of these facilities they're not in tourist destinations. So they're in challenging parts of the world. When the pandemic actually hit, we were fortunate, and I'll give my old boss a plug here, back in 2006 when we moved our headquarters from California to Texas, we basically made a decision that our IT population could work from home.
Wow.
So, we had a lot of practice, not only in the technology being there to support the organization, but really how we managed people, how we brought new people into the organization, the whole people aspect. We'd had, 15, 16 years of practice in doing that. So when the pandemic hit, every country had its unique challenges. We were very fortunate that, within 2 weeks, we had about 25,000 people working remotely from home, doing engineering work, doing procurement work, and obviously all the supporting functions, HR, finance, etc. And so, in India, as an example, a lot of folks didn't have a home computer. So we had to figure out how we could get assets to those individuals. A lot of folks in the Philippines didn't have reliable internet connectivity. And we were able to establish all of those things we've got a very large project in Kazakhstan. There's about 20,000 construction workers on site there at that refinery. That had a whole different set of challenges working with the infrastructure there. But and it was a cultural shift. An engineering company, there's a project director likes nothing more than to walk out of his office and see 500 smiling engineers sitting out there on the floor. And so for that to, in a matter of 2 weeks, turn upside down was a significant change for the company.
Has that experience looked at the long term for you of how do you carry that on and solve those initial problems that were barriers at first? Have you got those solved? Or in the future for these workers now is to continue doing what they're doing from home, or are they coming back to work?
For the most part, we have, on the technology side, certainly we have, Jim. It was probably no surprise to those of us, I've been with the company for over 30 years, and there's a certain culture as I said, that project director, as soon as the pandemic started to ease, they were chafing at the bit to have all the people back into the office. And we had an interesting meeting not so long ago where we got statistics of all of the people that had joined the company since 2019. And a staggering percent, I won't quote it because it's embarrassing, but it's if you think 30 or 40%, you've got to think higher. Of those people actually left since 2019, since joining the company. And the number one reason was workplace flexibility, and then it was benefits and these type of things. So that made the business leadership just spin 180 degrees to say, okay, we're going to have to figure out how to work from home, how we're going to have to support a hybrid working environment, because it was a shocking statistic that really said that old behavior has to change.
Yeah, and the workforce of tomorrow is going to want nothing less than that.
Correct. Yeah, they've got a bigger ask than we had, certainly when we entered the workforce.
Are you seeing, Josh, the workforce coming in? I mean, healthcare is such a big deal and a big industry, and it's changing quite a bit. And it's changing from the user experience, patient experience, if you will, to also how you work and how you deal with things. And so are you seeing that as well? Are you seeing the workforce want something different?
Yeah, so one of our biggest challenges when it comes to labor is we can't compete on price.
Right.
We are unable to even pay what would typically be considered market rate for the type of skills that we need. So highly valuable skills are extremely difficult and challenging for us to attract. So how do we do it? Well, there's mission, but there's also experience. Can we make your life comfortable when you work for us, more comfortable than if you were to work for someone else and getting paid more. So we try to define what can that experience look like? What do those people look for to be comfortable when they come to work? And we work with our partners as well to try to define that. So one of the ways that we work with our partners is by defining what are called experience level agreements. And you don't see those too often right now in contracts, but we've begun to solidify that contractually. And probably the best example that I can give on an experience level agreement is around user onboarding. So we sat with our partner and talked through what is a positive experience for a new hire. What does their first day look like that they would leave saying, that was a fantastic first day? Well, from an IT perspective, for that end user to have a great experience, they want to have the right equipment, they want to have the right software, and they want to have the right access right away, their first day. And that sounds so easy, and yet there's so many systems involved in order to get the right hardware, software, and access to an individual at the right time. And so we developed an experience level contractual agreement around that, and our partner committed to it. And now we can measure that. We can measure end user experience for new hire onboarding, and it's making a difference. It's making a difference.
Would you call that a digital transformation, or would you call it an optimization?
I think, so when I think about digital transformation, to me it's about how do we interact with each other without needing to be physically present. And so to me, an end user experience, an experience level agreement, including that user onboarding, if we're doing that for somebody entirely remotely, they never came into the office, we effectively drop shipped a laptop to them, they turned it on, it recognized who they are, it recognized what kind of software and access they needed, and it worked for them. That to me is a type of digital experience.
Yeah. Now, you did mention this experience level agreement. Is that, how do you establish that with the users? How do you, I mean, 'cause everybody wants something a little different, I assume, at least in my experience, that's been the way. Actually, service level agreements used to work in my benefit because nobody knew what the hell they wanted. They wanted everything. And so how are you seeing that work? Because that's kind of unique. I haven't really heard that too much.
It absolutely, I think it's fairly cutting edge. I actually feel really good about it because what we see, one of the other experiences we measure, and maybe this is a little bit closer to an SLA, is around customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
And based on, not based on a one-time survey, but on a daily checking in. So we have a mechanism to check in with all our users on a daily basis and then trend that over time. I think the challenge is we have different types of persona. So clinicians are looking for a different experience than a customer service agent. And when you define that experience level agreement, you have to define it in such a way that all personas are covered. So if you go back to that onboarding experience level agreement, it doesn't matter if you're a clinician, it doesn't matter if you're a customer service agent, you still expect to have the hardware, software, and access correct on the first day. It's different hardware, software, and access, but you still have that same expectation. So we try to identify those things that are common expectation, even if the details are different.
Plus you can measure it.
Exactly.
And Beth, given that digital transformation has been with us around, COVID kind of accelerated some, probably slowed some others. Are you seeing the effects of digital transformation from a business standpoint, not just from an IT standpoint? Are you seeing that happen more? Is it more successful, or is it more problematic?
I think we're still figuring it out, quite honestly. I think the pandemic proved that we can all work remotely, right? I think not everybody was convinced that we could before the pandemic. I think we figured out everybody can work remotely. But working remotely doesn't work for all businesses and doesn't work for all people. It certainly wasn't good for the mental health of a lot of our employees and a lot of our customers, et cetera. And so I think we don't necessarily know today what the workforce of tomorrow is going to look like. We certainly couldn't have predicted 5 years ago that we would have gone through a pandemic, right? Or we would have been prepared for it. But I think that we are figuring out what the workforce, what the workplace of tomorrow is going to look like and feel like. It's never going to go back to being completely in office working. It's not going to be completely working remotely. And it's not always about location. I think we learned that, inside our own businesses, we had, our systems were not always efficient enough to allow us to be, to work remotely or to work in the office. I think it exposed not only where our individual humans work, but it also exposed the weaknesses of our processes, the immaturity of our systems. So I think as part of the digital transformation journey, we're really trying to help our customers understand what's most important to you and your customers, right? Is it your systems? Is it your process? Is it your workforce? You think about the metaverse, right? Metaverse is what everyone's kind of thinking about for tomorrow. Is that going to work for everybody? No, it won't, right? But it will work for pockets of people in certain industries. And so I think a big part of the digital transformation is listening to what's important to the business and what's important to their customers. We're really about the customer experience and driving relevancy within your customer. If you're going to be success today, that success is largely driven on the experience that your constituents and your customers get, or the stakeholders. And so I think we don't necessarily know what 5 years is going to look like, but I do think that we have a good grasp on what the tools, the processes, and the journey that people need to take to get to the next evolution of what the workplace or what the business is going to look like. Because we're never really going to get there. It's going to be ever evolving, right? And so we have put in place with some of our customers what we call service evolution agreements, right? So you get into with a customer, you sign a 5-year contract for services at a certain price, right? And you may have negotiated service level agreements that may change over that term of that contract, or prices that may evolve, but the services themselves are set. We're not going to keep those services the same for 5 years. I think we knew that a long time ago, but I think the pandemic has escalated how fast our services have to evolve and how fast our customers' business will evolve. And so I think we have to be more flexible and more agile to help our customers along the journey, and that's the metric that we have to figure out.
So Beth, I see this, we're seeing, I think it's more of a business transformation.
It is.
Enabled by IT and digitization and things like that because of the new capabilities and things like that. And so it's more focused on, do you give the outcome, the business outcome that you're expecting, and having a service provider who focuses on that. Is that what you guys do? Do you focus on that part of it while having to sustain, obviously, and evolve the
100%.
IT?
It goes back to listening to what the customers, what's most important to them is driving their business value. You know, we were talking recently to a very large global shipping company. You know, there are 3 big ones, right, globally. And then having the conversation with the CIO of this organization, you know, I think in the past, they would have tried to keep up with their other competitors, being the other global shipping companies in the marketplace. The commentary with this customer is, my competitor is not the other shipping company that does what I do. My customer or my competitor is the company who has a better customer experience than I do, because that's what really drives his business value. That's what drives the success in his business. So, you know, the competitive landscape is changing, the market is changing, the metrics on which people are measuring business value is changing, and so we are helping our customers evolve to help them increase their business value and stay relevant.
Let me ask, you know, I heard on a report this morning that 14% of office space is going to become more available, or excuse me, it's going to be empty over the next 3 years. I thought it'd be higher than that, to be honest with you, but it's going to be empty. And in the same sentence, these reporters were saying that IT budgets are expected to grow. Now, I don't know about you guys, when IT budgets are expected to grow, there's always a CFO who says, no, not really. and I'm just wondering, what's your experience? Are you seeing those two things happening?
You know, on the real estate side, yeah, we still have, you know, we've still got 8,000 to 10,000 people working remotely. And those that are in the office, it's somewhat hybrid. You know, it's actually mainly executive level. The more senior the people, the more time they're spending in the office than the junior folks. The pressure's always on IT budgets, there's no doubt about it. But I do think, you know, with the pandemic, and then we thought the pandemic was a challenge, and then early January in Kazakhstan, there was civil unrest. The government shut the internet down, so that all of a sudden IT, how do you solve that one to allow people to work? We've got the European conflict, and here most recently we've got over 1,000 people in Shanghai, and you know the government they've shut the city down, and we thought we had a pretty slick model of how to support people remotely, and what the employees did, they took their computing assets home when they left, because it was announced that there was going to be a 4-day shutdown. It's now been, I think, 8 weeks or longer. But they didn't leave any computers in the office, and we have some very old 3D CAD software it's very graphic, database intensive. It is not the application you can run, you know, remotely, and so you've got to take over the asset. But because they cleaned the office out, we didn't have any computers there for them to work. So we're always struggling. We're always, you know, you're getting challenged along the way. The pressure on the budgets is always there, but I think with the partners that you have, you figure a way through it. I think we've reached a tipping point. Personally, we've cut back on on all the softer things that are actually the things that retain our people. So, we've cut back on training. The salary increases aren't significant, and the employees are letting you know with their feet that that's not what they're going to handle anymore. So there's a lot of, I think, budget pressure, not so much on the technology, but on the people that you need in the organization.
But I think, sorry, I was just going to say, I think the pressure on the IT budgets is really understandable because, again, the pandemic exposed vulnerabilities in the infrastructure and the technology that a lot of companies had, right? So you have to fix that. But if you're really going to move into the digital age, you have to invest in not only the technology to support it, but the processes and the systems and the journey to get there. And it takes dollars and time and people, right, to really dramatically change or reinvent a customer's business. That transformation journey is long, but you have to get to a certain level before you can really make appreciable change. And so, I think a lot of companies are spending dollars just trying to get up to a currency level in their technology to be able to take advantage of a lot of the digital journey that's available.
I've got a great story on
Please.
this one. Yeah, so we've declared ourselves to be a virtual company with on-site capabilities. We own our campus, and we're not going to sell commercial real estate in this market. It'll sell for zero. So we're going to have that real estate. So what do we do? Well, we've also heard from our users that they want an on-site experience available to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're actually going to use it, but they want it available to them. And there are reasons to use it. Sometimes people prefer, like here, to, let's call it, innovate together, right? Sometimes that's easier than innovating over a Teams or Zoom conference, but not everybody feels comfortable. So how do we support a hybrid experience? That's very, very hard. This is not hybrid, because that would be incredibly challenging technologically. So we were asked to invest with facilities together. So this is actually added budget to both parties in a collaborative space as a pilot where people could go to innovate and people could be remote innovating with them. Mm-hmm. But we're not Microsoft, right? So we're not, we don't have this incredible access to the type of technologies they do.
So let's take a leap forward. Let's pretend that I'm a hologram from Mars. And am I hybrid or am I here? And so that's a philosophical question, I guess. But if you think about the future, with the way technology is going, with 6G, we'd like to talk about 5G. I'm already on 6G, folks. 6G is going to make a hell of a difference. You're going to have cloud. I mean, everybody's going to be on cloud by then. There'll probably be a few that carry cloud in their pocket. It's going to change things, and expectations change. How are you going to be prepared for that? And don't say retired.
Retired.
It's got to be. How's you and your company are going to be prepared for that? How do you stay feasibly current to build this office of the future for the workforce of the future?
Okay, so we are going to make mistakes for sure, and I want to add something to.
By the way, Josh, when healthcare says they're going to make some mistakes.
No, not those kind of mistakes.
I just
Not those kind of mistakes.
Okay, not that kind of mistake. Okay, good.
No.
I feel better.
Please. So I would add organizational dynamics to the list to the things that you have to focus on. And let's come back to that innovation space that I was talking about and what it means to have, to make a mistake, what I mean. So we did all kinds of analysis of the types of training it would require to ensure that the people that are in these kind of hybrid meetings understand that there is a remote component. They need to involve those remote people in the conversation. The remote folks know how to interact, and people would feel together. And we thought we did a great job. We had some training, we did tips, and we had a facilitator at one point. So during the very first meeting where we had our executive team, we said, all right, we're ready. You guys are going to love this. A couple of the executives were remote. The rest said, yeah, we're going to come into the office. They were excited, their first hour went great, and then it was time for, let's just call them snacks. So snacks came into the room, and they had a very important discussion, which they could have their snacks while they had the discussion. The people who were remote heard zero, because what they heard were the crinkling of the wrappers of the snacks. That's organizational dynamics.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of mistakes we're gonna run into. And we kind of did it, right? I think we all kind of ran into those when we first started doing Teams and Zoom.
Sure. There's
There's gonna be a good half year of these kind of mistakes.
Yeah.
And we need to be prepared for that.
And I think that goes back to the evolution I was talking about earlier. To steal a phrase from my colleague Myron, we're going to tweak, rinse, and repeat, right? We were going to continually to evolve what tomorrow looks like. We have to start today, right? We have to actually have started yesterday, but we're going to continue to evolve. That's how we're going to be prepared. We can't create what has to exist 6 years from now or what 5 years from now, but if we continue to iterate that evolution of organizational change management, of driving business value, of reinventing ourselves, we're going to tweak, rinse, and repeat repeatedly for the next 30 years.
Oh, wow, okay. Robert, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I was thinking about Kevin's presentation earlier and that whole futuristic dynamic and going back to the engineering world. We only moved off Lotus Notes as an email system last year, so we're not an early adopter of new technology.
Well, it may come back.
It may come back. Yeah, I don't think so. We
Fingers
hedged
crossed
that
that.
bet for a while, but it didn't work. For us, we're seeing the biggest change really in how, as a business, we're using. Obviously, an engineering company is based on the intellectual capital of the employees. That's your only differentiation. And you can have good, solid processes and procedures, but you're relying on people following those. We've had a huge investment in digital over the number of years. How we're basically using the same data and have got, and elements of, you've got truth relative to that data as it moves through the EPC cycle. We've got a significant investment in analytics that is truly a differentiator for our organization to be able to ensure that as you're going in for these multi-billion-dollar projects, that your schedule and your cost and these things are in place. And from the employee point of view, you have to appeal to, what is it that the employee wants to get out of working for a company like Fluor. And engineers, they like nothing better than to drive past, the Bay Bridge, we built that, or when you go to LAX and the People Mover, we're building that at the moment. So a lot of our employees get that personal satisfaction because they're building something.
Yeah.
But it's going to be an interesting challenge as we try to attract new employees into the company when it is a very old industry. And very staid in how it operates procedurally. Some of the things that folks have spoken about here, I just couldn't imagine our engineering culture, morphing into that. So it's going to be some challenges for
So
us,
technology may shift and change. Workforce may want to work a little different. What about management? In my studies, I did some studies with Avasant and the research, and we looked at some of the future IT work that's going on. And one thing I've observed was that it's one thing to have these technologies. You certainly want a good business outcome and things like that. But what I found was, why isn't there a management transformation? Why isn't there a looking at the organization a little differently than the tradition? Not that IT has a traditional organization model like some of the other functional areas, but given where the workforce may be and where they want, don't we need some sort of transformation in how we think about?
Yes, I agree with definitely. Recruiting, and I think it was on a panel. Some of the folks here may have been on it. When you get the Brady Bunch screen and all the faces there. And someone said that recruiting is a gladiator sport at the moment. Because you're looking to recruit someone. Behind the scenes, they're simply using your offer to get a counter from their existing employee. And you've got this escalating issues that you're dealing with. how you manage the people and how you attract and retain, that's the skill level that we need to develop. Yeah. And you know, coaching people, onboarding people is very challenging in a, you know, a very remote working from home environment. Yep. And I think the tech industry, you know, the way they package benefits is completely different to how our organization works. You know, their incentivization to the employees is completely different. But they're appealing to those individuals because they get satisfaction out of that company. So if you've got a sustainable business or a non-profit, you know, that's satisfying the employee's cause and need, and that's really key to tap into that, I think.
I think perhaps a big difference between a global company and a regional one, I don't have access as a regional company to global perspectives and what's going on in the market and the latest in management thinking. So I agree that we need to constantly enhance management capability, perspectives, ideas, but all we have is us folks in Buffalo. And so that's where the partner ecosystem comes in, conferences like this, meeting other folks. This is how we, as a client, a regional client, this is how I gain access to what other ideas are there from a management perspective and try to bring that in. But we really do rely on the Avasants of the world and the Atoses of the world to come to us with those ideas. Otherwise, we wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Well, we're here to support you, Josh, whatever you need. But I think we absolutely need a change in the way our management structure works. I think it's more important now than it ever has been to have a diverse management structure. Yeah. Because I think we have to lead with compassion. I think the pandemic has taught us that whatever the workplace of tomorrow in the future look like, we have to instill a level of compassion into our leadership that perhaps has been missing for a while, you know, and I'm a huge believer in boosting up women into executive leadership. I won't get on my soapbox, I promise. But you know, during the pandemic, I am so proud of so many of the executive women leaders that I have, you know, relationships with, because I think executive women leaders really rose to the challenge during the pandemic. I think, and this sounds incredibly stereotypical, I don't mean for it to be, I love all of you men, you are wonderful leaders, but I think women historically are used to dealing with children at home, a professional work life, having to take care of the groceries, having to take care of the dinner, having to take care of the PTA, having to take care of the soccer, having to take care of a business trip, and making sure everything is arranged to do that. And I think that that level of work and home balance prepared women leaders for the pandemic in a way that perhaps it hadn't prepared some of our male counterparts. Yeah. And so I think that we have to introduce a level of compassion into our leadership that I think has been missing.
Okay. Well, you know, we're almost out of time, so I thought we would do a quick lightning round. I don't know how we can do a slow one, but we'll do a lightning round. And I'm thinking of your takeaways, your thoughts, not only for today's session, but overall. You know, has this been helpful to you? And are you happy you attended? And I do want to point out one quick thing, and then I'll give you time, is I've never seen Kevin's golf game look that good before. So if the metaverse can help his golf game that way, then I'm in. I'm into the metaverse. And I said I would throw this in there. I'm coining a term now. I want to be the omniverse, omnipresence in the omniverse. And so and I think it will help my golf game. What do you think? Not about my golf game, but you know, takeaways.
I'll start.
Yeah.
I love that you talked about compassion. I really love that, and diversity, because it comes back to, again, how does a company like mine compete for labor if we can't compete on price? And it comes to that experience. If we're a compassionate people and we're compassionate with each other, and we reflect the diversity of the community, that'll make a difference. And can we translate that into the upcoming capabilities in the digital world. How do we translate, compassion to the metaverse? I think those are some of the things we'll need to tackle.
Thank you. And Robert, any quick?
The conference is wonderful. I think just the atmosphere of after dinner last night, all the people that had congregated in the bar, you could tell that we all missed that social interaction. And, the ability to reach out and touch someone that you've had conversations with for 2 years is amazing. And I struggle to think how these future verses we're going to be able to achieve that level of human interaction that we need in our job. I think the key, the technology side of everything that we're looking at, I think is relatively easy. It's the people piece that's challenging. And for me, coming to these conferences, it's kind of a little bit of a litmus test. You hear someone talking about what they're doing with cyber, and I say, yeah, that's kind of similar to what we're doing. And even the gentleman from Ring yesterday said, if you use the same outputs and expecting the same inputs and expecting a different output, well, you're never going to be satisfied. You've got to really look at those inputs. So there's always little nuggets, I think, of information that you take away that make something like this really worthwhile.
Well, I want to, first of all, thank you all very much. It's been a great panel. I hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you soon. And thank you.
Thank you.